Today, we'll talk about order blocks, liquidity, inducement, and how it affects the price movements. Then we will work on trading examples, most of the trades that I took last week. This will be a crazy trading video for day traders and scalpers. You'll learn about liquidity hunts, inducement reactions, supply and demand trading, support and resistance flips, trend riding, structure shifting, imbalance trades, and order blocks. We have so much to do. If you're ready, let's start. Welcome our free trading course, all about price action trading strategies and smart money concepts. If you love scalping and day trading, check out my free course. You can find the links on Google Drive or directly from my website, which is in the description. And please try to watch videos in order, otherwise it can confuse you. This week was one of the craziest weeks that I had in a long time, winning after winning, hammering the Bitcoin all week. Let's talk about how I get my bias and trend direction first. When I was looking at this 4-hour chart, I noticed that we already swept this 4-hour liquidity point, and the price is powered up with imbalance as well, and it was pushing itself back. This is one of my first signals looking for short trades. But of course, we never short anything blindly. We must have multiple confluences and reasons before taking any action. Going down to the 1-hour chart, price wicked this BPR area and makes a swing failure pattern. More importantly, this hourly order block rejected the price. Now I know that the price already swept the 4-hour liquidity and is now being rejected on this hourly chart. Do you think these are enough reasons to take shorts? No, not at all. I need more reasons. I sometimes combine more than 10 concepts together to take a single action. First of all, check this perfect equal lows here, one of the finest you can see on the charts. And there is a deeper liquidity point below with a very tight parabolic area, which I like a lot to take out. All that combined with the imbalance. Do you see what I'm doing here? I am looking for more and more reasons if the price may want to go down or not. After all that knowledge, I already knew the bias. All I had to do was wait for the opportunities to take a short trades. I basically wrote this structure. I kept hammering the Bitcoin. I simply destroyed Bitcoin. It was no challenge to me. Now, let's take a closer look at a couple of trades. First of all, I noticed this inner shift right here after the liquidity sweep. I'm not looking for the origin of the movement. My bias is already set, bearish. All I need was waiting for small structure shifts on the market. You can notice this 30-minute imbalance right here, which is actually combined with a dragon order block. Price was also in the inner premium areas, make my short trade easier. As a target, I was mainly focused on liquidity levels below. But as you know me, what I enjoy is in and out trades with the closest targets. This BPR area was my main target to hit at that moment. Remember, my targets are set way before I am looking for an entry. Entry is not a problem. First, find your targets. The problem was here, the price consolidated way too much around this BPR. I had to end the trade there. Remember, money is money, profit is profit. At the end of the day, you should aim to leave the house with money in your pockets. All this trade was based on 3 time frames: 4 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes. No need to check lower time frames. Let's continue with the next trades. Remember, we are riding the structure downwards, trying to keep taking out those tasty liquidity areas below. The structure kept shifting right here with a new break of structure. And again, price pulled back to its imbalance, which is actually also a support and resistance flip area, which was giving me extra confidence. However, at this time, something happened. Notice this extremely close 3 liquidity points, and also the previous week low and previous day low appeared on my chart. Do you see what is happening right here? The amount of liquidity keeps increasing every day. Price is screaming that I want to go down. You just have to learn to hear the price. Price is the only and single indicator that you will ever need. It was a no-brainer here. I take my market sell here without need of risk-reward calculation, a manual entry, because at this point I was 99.99% sure it was going down. Since this was a manual entry, I closed this trade early when I saw a nice profit. I did not push my luck. If I do not use risk-reward calculation, I generally close my trades with a number that I'm satisfied with. Let's talk about another trade. Remember, we keep going down, still riding the high time frame structure down. Later on, I noticed another set of equal lows here. One sign after another keeps popping up to go short. My short bias became more and more powerful. Let's see what happened at the New York opening here. Price made fake MSB. Probably all new beginner smart money traders jumped into this fake structure break. However, remember, we are going down. An extreme amount of liquidity gathered below. Higher time frame structure is downwards, riding towards those liquidity. Then the inner structure changed again. Basically, the structure inside structure changes again here. Then something else happens. Yet another equal lows pop up one more time. I have to admit, at this point, things were getting crazy and out of hand. In a second, I was willing to put my 100% of the account on the line. I want to sell my houses, my car, all real estates, and put on this trade to short it. Of course, we are not that crazy. Right after this point, I noticed the super BPR, the rally starter, but not in a random place, just after the inducement area. If you watched my previous video on catching rallies with inducement and super BPR strategy, you should easily see these structures. This was the point I made another market sell. This was not a quick trade. However, at the end, you can see all of our liquidity levels cleared. It is important to know what is going to happen before it happens. At this moment of the week, I was already tired of taking trades. I was not going to push myself anymore and relax. But Bitcoin won't let me. Keep showing me these easy setups and free money. I really did not want to trade, but I had to. Who am I to say no to free money? Remember, we are still riding the structure to these liquidity levels below. The parabolic area is still waiting for us. At this point, I saw another strong break with this giant imbalance. Also, this support and resistance flip area again. The same thing kept happening over and over and over, one after another. Taking a single look on the charts, I already saw the setup in a couple of seconds. Right just before the New York Open, I already noticed these relative equal lows again, one more time. And the inner structure changed again right here. Remember, we are riding the higher time frame structure downwards. I am only focusing on inner structure shifts that are inside the higher time frame structure. And the rest was classic price action again. Swing failure pattern, imbalance dragon order block with simple premium and discount. I hope this was clear for you. So, all in all, what did we do here? Let's recap. 1. In 4-hour time frame, we saw that a major swing point swept with a giant imbalance. We got our fill. 2. In 1-hour time frame, we pointed out all possible liquidity points that come into life as equal lows and parabolic. 3. With a suitable structure in 30 and 15 minutes, we kept riding the structure downwards until we clear all those liquidity levels. Okay folks, with this video, we have learned a lot about inducement and liquidity, useful trading methods. I believe that it will be really helpful in your trading life while you are scalping, day trading, or even swing trading. I hope you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you, please take care and see you soon.